I'm Madhavdas G. Ladies and gentlemen, the US-Iran peace deal has now formally been signed. It promises an end to conflict across the region, not just in Iran and Gulf countries, but also in Lebanon. Now, that was a key demand of Iran, and many argue that the peace deal is not just a halt in the war, but actually a big victory for Iran. Hormuz is now free, Iran can export oil, and all the previous sanctions are now no longer in place. Within hours since the deal was struck, the first cracks seem to have emerged. The tensions aren't just between Israel and Iran, they are now visible between Trump and Netanyahu as well. The biggest obstacle to peace is Israel's military presence in South Lebanon. Donald Trump is pushing for a complete ceasefire in West Asia, but Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is refusing to back down, with Iran warning of consequences if the agreement is violated. Today on the National Debate, we'll be decoding what all this means for every side: the United States, Iran, Israel, and even as far as India is concerned. Let's take a quick look at what really has happened as far as this peace deal is concerned, and this is the first important point. 100 billion plus in terms of frozen assets of Iran have now been unlocked. If you go further, $300 billion of reconstruction in package in place for Iran. Sanctions relief as far as oil are concerned, and oil is back on the markets, of course. Iran can now export it. The regime survives. There is no change as far as the regime is concerned. We're also seeing the Strait of Hormuz reopening, and the naval blockade has now ended. Also further, Iran's nuclear program appears to have survived for the moment. Remains to be seen what happens in 60 days of negotiations. Only 440 kilograms of the uranium stockpile is now under the lens. Let me quickly introduce our panelists who are joining us for more on this. With us is Syed Mitra, Senior Fellow of IPCS. We have Ambassador Jeffrey Gunter, who is a former diplomat of the United States. Eaton is attorney and Middle East expert. Staff Cohen is an IDF Special Forces reservist. Ina Tangent is Senior Fellow at the Taihe Institute and Chairman of Asia Narratives. Syed Imamian is an Assistant Professor at the Tehran Polytechnic University and co-founder of governance and policy think tank GPTT, and Zaki Zaidi is a Middle East analyst and former IDSA researcher. Let me start with you, Ambassador Gunter. It appears that Iran has pretty much got a very, very sweet deal. All that it wanted, Iran has been able to get. One could perhaps say that Iran has won this war. Ambassador Gunter.
Well, go ask the Ayatollah. Oh, wait, he's gone. He doesn't exist. Go ask the second Supreme Commander. Oh, wait, he's gone. He doesn't exist. Go ask the Commander of the Navy. Oh, wait, he doesn't exist. Go ask the Air Force. Oh, wait, they're not flying. This is absolutely a respectful surrender on the part of Iran. They have no other cards to play. This will play out perfectly. This is a peace deal, a PIECE deal, where we've taken huge pieces out of the Iranian military structure, destroyed their ability to manufacture weapons, and now they are being walked almost like a dead man walking to the negotiation table.
This is no different. I grant you that you've caused huge damage to Iran. What has US gained? Please tell us in one line, what has US gained?
No nuclear weapons, number one. No intercontinental ballistic missiles, number two. Hormuz, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah has been absolutely decimated. Now look at, whenever you have a surrender
haven't you agreed to a ceasefire in Lebanon? How have they been decimated if there is a ceasefire in Lebanon?
That is to be seen. The Israelis are brilliant.
It's not very clear.
The Israelis are brilliant, and we have them under the gun. You have to give peace a chance when you've taken a PIECE out of these, the most greatest state sponsor of terror ever. This is a win. This is a win for America. All the naysayers would not be saying this if in the first 2 weeks of World War II, we had taken out Adolf Hitler. So the reality is we've devastated Iran. The Israelis have done a brilliant job. And guess what? The world's a safer place. But also importantly, India is going to be doing fantastic when they buy a lot of that oil at a whole lot lower price, and they don't have a nuclear power.
Certainly agree with you. That's a huge relief for the global economy. Oil perhaps would become cheaper. At least that's the hope. Maybe not immediately, but in the middle to long term. But let me bring in Syed Imamian, who's the assistant professor at the Tehran Polytechnic University. Syed Imamian, I want you to respond to Ambassador Gunter. He says that it is a victory for the United States. We managed to defeat Iran, Iran caused huge amounts of damage as far as Iran is concerned. How would you respond to the ambassador?
It seems that it's kind of the illusion that Americans have dreamed for since the beginning of the war. And it was the President Trump that one of the rare American presidents that naively his policy was hijacked by Israelis and he pushed into the war without any strategic vision. And very much soon, in first 10 days of the war, he found that there is no military solution for that war. So he was very much desperate of finding an escape way from the pitfall that he was pushed in by the Israelis' misinformation and blackmailing campaign. So as an academic and a think tanker, I never been involved in a decision-making process, but I was informed about some exchanges of the messages through the mediators since the second week of the war, that President Trump was very desperate, looking for someone to help him escaping such a pitfall. So as far as I was involved, even Pakistanis and Qataris and other countries that they have played the role of mediator, they have been very much pushed and demanded by President Trump because he found very much soon that he has been pushed into the war without a strategic vision. Now, we could say that Iran has lost a lot. Iran has been damaged a lot. But strategically, at the end of the day, everyone is talking now about a strategic defeat of the U.S. because of, as I said, President Trump was electorally promised to keep American interest first. But he was seen since last more than a year of his second term as the most Israeli first president of the U.S. So that's the reason that he's looking for to change such kind of the political context and to show himself as someone looking for peace and looking for American interests rather than Israelis' interests.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me bring in Aaron Eaton on that note. Aaron, the point is this, that perhaps President Trump needed this off-ramp at the earliest. He has his own midterm elections to be worried about. Oil prices are rising. Inflation is rising globally. Perhaps those are issues of concern for President Trump. Of course, I don't claim to know. But the point is this, that at the end of the day, you're promising to pay $300 billion to Iran. You know, that's a huge step back for President Trump, something that he himself has denied a few days ago, but now it's part of the final draft.
It's very, very hard to justify any part of this. From anybody who's been following his rhetoric leading up to this war, anybody who was close to some of the considerations that were being implemented here, this is being seen as a betrayal and as a surrender by a lot of people who had been many of his biggest supporters. And I've got to point out that one of the biggest dangers in this agreement is one that's going to affect India and everyone else. If you look at the 5th paragraph that talks about reopening the Straits of Hormuz, there is a line in there that says there will be without charges for a specific period of time. Under customary international law, which includes the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, but actually predates it by a century.
Very important. I agree. Yes.
The Straits of Hormuz are meant to be open to maritime shipping without fee. This appears to set the stage for Iran and Oman to levy a brand new set of tolls that is going to affect international trade for years to come. So this agreement is incredibly damaging to everyone.
And in fact, let me bring in some of our other panelists. Zaki, you know, is this something that Iran is quite likely to do? And what really has the U.S. gained? Because we had a situation where Strait of Hormuz, it was freely navigable. Iran has now asserted its military might over that particular region. And now, if they can start charging a toll or a tariff, as Aaron says, what really has U.S. or any country for that matter gained through this?
You know, even the closest allies of Donald Trump, they all agree that for the Americans and for Israelis, it is an absolute loss. Okay, the war objectives have been like so far away, you know, from being met. In the beginning, they wanted an absolute surrender of Iran. In the beginning, they wanted total capitulation. Then their control on the missiles and regime change. Nothing has been changed. Now, Iran is able to put a text in the interim draft that, okay, after 60 days, they can possibly charge tolls and recover that war damages in the time to come. So this shows the difference in the strategic depth of the leadership. In US, under the Israeli pressure, they just randomly go for a war, and their understanding, the American understanding, the Israeli understanding of the winning and losing in the war is as much as they can kill. This is very much similar to Al-Qaeda or ISIS, that their psychology and their philosophy that as much as numbers of people you kill, you won. It's not like that. It's about whether your strategic objectives are achieved or not. Right. In this case, Iran has definitely an upper hand. You go to any analyst, any observer of Middle East across the world, across the ideology, across the country, they all agree on the same point, that even though Iran sustained huge infrastructural damage, their top leadership was wiped out, but at the result, they have an upper hand in the negotiations. Okay. They are going to, where sanctions are going to be waived off, they are going to be opened in the global economy. They are in far better position than they used to be before the war.
Okay, let's quickly take a look at what this point, as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, before we go across to our next guest. Let's quickly bring that up on the screen. The first aspect is that, whether this deadlock regarding Hormuz is resolved. The first is that Hormuz traffic resumption could take months. The second aspect is months of struggle before there is complete normalcy in that particular region. Also, the energy prices are still going to remain high for a few months. This is what many experts have predicted, and that Iran says that Hormuz won't return to the pre-war condition. That takes me back to Abhijit. Abhijit, what really has been done in this case? Because if the entire issue concerning Hormuz hasn't been resolved, there's every possibility not just of costs as far as oil going up, but also of Iran's permanent dominance of that region and perhaps being able to extract a monetary price for ship movement in coming years.
So look, let's first understand victory is a political concept. Clausewitz keeps saying this. If you're going to measure people by, oh, look who we bumped off, who we didn't bump off, that's not victory. This is, what Robert McNamara used to say, that the more we seem to be bombing the North Vietnamese, the closer to Saigon they seem to be getting, basically. Now, there is something good out here, which is that this seems to be, understand this is a standstill agreement. We have 60 days now to negotiate the actual nitty-gritties of what the nuclear details are going to be. Number one, what has happened is you have agreed to a permanent cessation of enrichment and a promise that you will not go. And these are all the JCPOA checks, which I presume which will be implemented. And this is better than the JCPOA in that one particular sense, because the JCPOA had a sunset clause which was meant to kick in last year, 2025, and was meant to end in 2031, a 5-year period over which, the restrictions on Iran would slowly be lifted. However, the course of this war has meant your entire credibility in terms of defending your Gulf allies has gone through the window. Your credibility in terms of, backing up Israel has gone through the window, because the Israelis are feeling very betrayed, rightly so. You have allowed diplomatic absolute clumsiness, allowing Iran to essentially link a ceasefire of the Houthis and Lebanon into something that is happening nuclear linked with Iran. Iran has now extended its, essentially extended its territoriality, sovereignty to the entire Hormuz, which was technically shared with Oman. And bits of it, the entry into Hormuz is shared with UAE. Now, for you to have done that, given up the sovereignty that other countries have over Hormuz, this is not looking good as an ally at all. So I'm very sorry, but Iran has won this round lock, stock and barrel. There is no other conclusion to this. Now, if you want to go by head count, sure, do the Robert McNamara thing. Congratulations, is going to be end up like another Vietnam for you. Okay. Can I also say that victory was a different concept for the Israelis and the Americans? Israelis were actually winning because their political goals were very different from the American goals.
Right.
They actually succeeded till this last round where, Trump kind of threw them under the truck, or the baby with the bathwater, whatever analogy have you. America not looking good in all of this.
Okay, let me bring in Stav on those 2 points. Stav, at the end of the day, is Israel going to stick to it? The voices coming in, top ministers, leaders, even Netanyahu himself, they all appear to be on a very different page as far as US is concerned, but will they have any other option but to grin and bear it? Point number one. And point number two, as far as Hormuz is concerned, there is nothing that US or Israel could have done. Israel dominated the Strait of Hormuz through this war, and the very fact that they're still talking about collecting a toll after this 60-day period just goes to show that you've completely changed the pre-war condition, the situation where Iran now appears to have very clear dominance and advantage in that region.
Well, sir, thank you very much for having me once again, first of all. And, I think my colleagues here were talking about winning this war. And I think that as the only soldier out here, special forces who actually fought terrorists in the battlefield, they need to emphasize the terminology winning here in the Middle East. If you will leave one IRGC terrorist on a rubbish on what used to be the only building that's left in Iran, and that IRGC terrorist will have only one leg and one hand and one flag that says win, he will climb on the rubbish and it will claim winning because he did not kill them until the last one. We see winning different from how you guys here are speaking under your fluorescents and with your suits. You don't get what winning is when you're fighting on your survival. Some of the good people of India, unfortunately, know how it feels like to survive through terrorism, as I spoke and I shared with Moses of Israel podcast, I believe, not long ago. But here's what you need to understand about what's going on right now. I had the pleasure of interviewing here at the beginning of this war several times. I distinctly remember that we had two other faces, meaning President Trump, of course, but other terrorist who is now burning in hell in a special date with 72 virgins. Now his son, or what left of his son, is supposed to be the leader, if you can call him that. And hopefully, we say Bezrat Hashem, hopefully he will follow his dad.
Let's not get into that kind of rhetoric because, you will provoke a reaction. They will again start calling you all sorts of names. I don't want to take the debate down that road. Very respectfully, just hear me out.
I never called anyone here in any names.
Yeah, but the point is that you're abusing the leader. They will return you the favor. I just don't want this debate to degenerate. I'm asking you a very simple question, Stab. Please bear with me and just listen to my question. You can answer this question. I'm not stopping you from speaking, but I'm just asking you a very simple question. If you believe this war has been won, why is Israel still present in Lebanon? And Israel, is it in any position now, given the fact that this multiple point deal has been signed, to agree with the points of not taking the aggravation, not taking the fighting any further when it comes to Lebanon?
I never said that I think that this war is won, sir. I never said it, never claimed it. I think for the first time since the war broke out, I believe with many of my colleagues here who are some of them advocating for terrorism and for the IRGC. Unfortunately, this war is far from over. It started 47 years ago, and I believe that our children, and most especially the children of Israel and the U.S., will pay the price for this not finished war. And if I may, some of my colleagues here also said earlier, war of choice or anything similar to that. May I just say that the only choice that we actually had here is between life and death. And when people do not understand the mentality of the supreme leader of Iran, for instance, Ahmadinejad, former president of Iran, 2005, 2013, they need to know his quote. And I'm quoting, "We will convert the entire world into Islam." This is the Khilafah. You have to be the right kind of Muslim in order to survive in their new world based on Sharia law, and that is to submit to Allah. And if you're not willing to do that, we already seen, it's the orange sweatsuit on your knees, and then you're saying goodbye to your head when you're refusing to submit to Allah and become one of those radical terrorists.
Okay. All right. So it's a totalitarian regime. That's the sum and substance of what he's essentially trying to say. And let me bring in Ina Tangent on that. Ina Tangent, the important point is what happens from here on. Because, many other countries like China, India, of course, might now get access to cheaper oil. That's one possible outcome of all of this. But how has the balance really changed? And has China been, the one country that has perhaps benefited the most without firing a single shot in this entire conflict?
Well, you can't blame a team if the other team, you can't say it's a strategy of one team when the other team makes its own goals. China has been standing by, not neutrally. It has been actively trying to find some way to peace. Remember, it's the United States that broke two truces, not truces, there were two discussions about reaching some sort of compromise, and instead of waiting till they finished, they attacked. We now know from reporting from the New York Times that Donald Trump was convinced on the 11th by Netanyahu to consider the idea of going to war in Iran, and by the 25th or 26th, he had decided to go ahead with it. If you think back to that time, you'll know that the U.S. was actively in negotiations for peace and was coming close. A lot of people thought that they were doing, and this was verified by the British. In terms of what Israel is and the United States and Iran, I don't think that there can be any kind of peace in the Middle East as long as you have an aggressive nation like Israel, who's attacked 6 other nations with a nuclear arsenal. Obviously, other countries will feel threatened, and they will try to have their own nuclear weapons. And I'm not just talking about Iran, I'm talking about other nations. So, as I said, this is not going to be over ultimately. Sure, you can have a little short-term amount of cheaper oil, but that's not going to last long. Lasting peace depends on denuclearizing the Middle East, getting tensions down, convincing Israel that it can actually live with its neighbors as opposed to either dominating or destroying them.
Okay, Ambassador Gunter and staff both want to respond to you, but before I come across to you, gentlemen, let's take a quick look in terms of what the really agreements are when it comes to the nuclear program and Iran's nuclear stockpile is concerned. There's 440.9 kilograms of uranium that's enriched up to 60%. That is, of course, point number 1. The enriched uranium is stored in the gas form. We also know that they require only weeks to enrich up to 90%. 90% enrichment equals weapons-grade uranium. And there's no clarity on Iran's capacity for enrichment as well. So that, of course, becomes a very, very important point as well. So how can US then remove Iran's uranium? What's the option really? The fact is they can convert the uranium gas into more stable powder form. There's also, of course, the fact that they can make transportation of uranium significantly safer. There's also highly enriched uranium that could be down blended in Iran, and the enriched uranium can then be diluted with low purity uranium. That's the second option that you have before it. Ambassador Gunter, what really is the US going to do? Because you don't have any firm assurance except for a broad agreement that they would, sort of go slow as far as the nuclear program is concerned. What's the guarantee that Iran's nuclear program is going to come to any end? And have you really eliminated the nuclear threat in that event?
When it comes to the American justice system, it's called dead man walking. You watch him walk to the gallows, and guess what? He keeps walking. Why? Because he's in shackles, and there's about 5 armed guards around him. That is what's going on with Iran right now. They are the IGRC, the country, not the individuals. This is the largest hostage situation we've ever seen in the history of mankind. You have 91 million Iranians being held hostage by these theocratic lunatics. And as far as the bizarre comments by the panelists before me, talking about how Israel is the preventer of peace in the Middle East, I mean, that's one of the most delusional comments I've ever had in an adversarial panel. The reality is the Abraham Accords are signed by 4 Arab countries, and on top of it, the Saudis are going to be on board, the Qataris are going to be on board. So I don't know where these people have Israeli delusion syndrome. I think we have a new syndrome. It used to be TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Now we have Israel delusion syndrome, where these guys are showing signs of absolute delusions, where they're not only neurotic to the point where they're building sandcastles in the sky, they are psychotic and they are living in them. Israel is a promoter of peace. The reality is Hezbollah is a terrorist state within southern Lebanon, and they will be
Ambassador Gunter, can you assure us that Israel is going to stop attacking Lebanon, the Lebanese areas where they are currently prevented, where they are currently present, and they're going to stop the attacks for Hezbollah?
If Hezbollah behaves, and it's very hard for terrorists and people who love killing innocent people and launching tens of thousands of missiles on civilian populations.
So you're saying there's no guarantee of peace in Lebanon?
Can they keep their hand out of the killing cookie jar? I don't really know, but I got news for you.
No,
they don't do very
I'm
well
asking
with
you on the
cell phones.
basis of the
They
agreement.
Don't do very well with beepers.
Ambassador Gunter, Lebanon is part of the agreement. You would also agree.
I've met Benjamin Netanyahu. I cannot speak for him, but I can tell you that if there is a true peace in the Middle East, Israel will be at the forefront, along with the greatest president the United States have ever seen.
Okay.
Donald
Syed
Trump.
Imamian, would you like to
And
respond to
as far as
Ambassador
the
Gunter?
Israel delusion syndrome, I think we have a new syndrome on your show, and I'm a physician. I think it's really interesting to see the delusionment that I'm seeing from these panelists.
All right. Let's get a response from Mr. Imamian. Mr. Imamian, go ahead.
Yeah, a strange thing we are hearing here. A terrorist from IDF that has been convicted by the all international courts as genocidal state, that they have done genocide for the last 2 years in Gaza and Lebanon, in Syria and in Iran. And they have been the most...
Mr. Imamian, in the same spirit in which I asked him earlier not to, resort to that kind of language, my only request is if you start calling other panelists terrorists, then, they will also return the favor. I just don't want the debate to degenerate. So let's try and keep this debate a little above board. My request to all of you. Please, go ahead.
But because I heard something very strange here as an academic, but as someone that are observing the situation in the region, I should respond to such kind of the accusation from someone that is by DNA the terrorist political project. So something that is happening now in the region, everyone knows that the main source of insecurity is the Israelis' aggression and expansionism. May heard about the greater Israel. That means they're violating the sovereignty of the several countries in the region. So unless someone could contain the Israelis' aggression and genocidal and expansionism, there won't be any peace in the region. Now, there is a question whether the tail wagging the dog, whether President Trump is able to contain Israel's aggression, to have Benjamin Netanyahu's political ambition contained or under control, or there won't be any chance for any peace or any deal or any ceasefire. So that's the Trump's turn and Trump's responsibility to make them under control. And otherwise, there would be no chance for any deal, as it has been clearly mentioned in the first point of the already disclosed MOU.
Okay, so will Israel be the deal breaker? That becomes a big question then. Staff Cohen, you want to respond to that? Will Israel then become the deal breaker? That's the question that's on perhaps everyone's minds, because this particular peace deal could be very, very fragile if Israel starts to once again launch strikes in Lebanon.
It's not that Israel will strike back once again in Lebanon, sir. I don't think that your viewers know. May I share with them that 4 IDF brave hero soldiers died just last night because of Hezbollah. So it's not that IDF will attack once again. We are in war, sir. This is a war. 4 kids, IDF soldiers, I'm saying kids because they're very young, but they are soldiers, of course, in terms of international law, they are legitimate targets. No one is arguing about that. But 4 soldiers died. This called a war. And just as I told you before, sir, if you want to win this war, you need to kill every last one of those radical terrorists, because their goal is very simple, as that is to submit democracy, freedom, love. Just take a look what's happening in the streets of Tehran, where my grandmother had to flee from to Israel. They're making their women covering their heads with hijab. This is how they treat their women, while we send our women in Air Force to bomb the shit out of them. And if I may, I'm sorry, sir. And some of my colleagues here said that Israel's aggression is giving hard time to the Middle East in order to have a stability or something. I don't know. I don't listen to nonsense. But may I just say that isn't it ironic that people here are actually advocating for a terror regime that executed tens of thousands, 30,000, if I'm not mistaken, of their own people. The streets are filled with blood. No one cares about it.
Let me get a quick response from Zaki Zaidi. I think Zaki wants to respond to Zaki Zaidi.
May I just finish the sentence? They don't care.
Your guest from Israel, I'm seriously wondering that whether he's used to, because here are all academics and people from think tanks, they discuss having serious points. He's just ranting random rhetorics and just going on and on. And I think he should be more mindful of what sort of language he's using. He's not on some random TikTok video. This is a debate. People, academics, professors, they are discussing an issue. Okay. And this is very offensive. However, coming back to the point, he was mentioning about, 4 soldiers killed. So they were not killed. They are invading the Lebanese territory. Okay. And they were killed in retaliation. And as right now we are discussing, they have carpet bombed South Lebanon, and more than 40 people have been killed, like including many children.
But Zaki, their point is that this is a terrorist group. Hezbollah exactly is not known for social service. They've also taken lives.
But what Ben Gvir, okay, just I will read his tweet that with you, like what he thinks, like the mentality. For every tear of Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. Isn't it the psychology of a terrorist? This is like same like Al Qaeda and ISIS. Like they were on the killing spree. ISIS killed thousands and thousands of innocent people. Al Qaeda, bombed World Trade Center.
Okay, I'm allowing that. I want Staff to answer. Staff, you're also speaking the language of terrorist groups. That's the criticism here. Your response?
Well, absolutely, sir, if I may. I think that you need to keep in mind that IDF went into Lebanon after Lebanon or Hezbollah actually fired rockets and murdered Israeli civilians. So, of course, you're coming after those who are killing your babies, your elders, your innocent civilians. When my own wife gave birth to our baby daughter just two and a half months ago, it was in a freaking bomb shelter while Iranian missiles were on their way to kill us all. When she was 10, she was already 23 times in a bomb shelter. Don't lecture me about hurting civilians, please. When we are engaging in the war, when we're having the most civil war that the most cautious, taking very precautions in history of modern warfare, meaning that in Gaza, one of my colleagues here said it, you have genocide in Gaza, right? Keep in mind, you have a ratio of 1 to 2 militants per civilians being killed rather than the modern ratio, average ratio, which is 1 to 8, 1 to 9.
I will only say that even if one civilian killed, it's one civilian too many, wherever the theater of war may be, whether it's Gaza, whether it's any other part of the world. So let's not try and justify that, but I will bring across the next point. Let's come back to the main issue, which is the deal itself. And there's a comparison that we have between the JCPOA of 2015 and what's been discussed right now, and agreed upon right now, rather. Let's take a quick look at that and take a look at what really was contained within the earlier agreement, what's contained now. Now, this is Obama's JCPOA versus Trump's MOU. Earlier, there was a multilateral international pact which contained detailed technical rules. Now, this is strictly a bilateral agreement and serves as an introductory framework only. The earlier JCPOA had solely targeted nuclear restrictions. Now, this includes major financial rebuilding plans as well. Earlier, we had seen a cap on the uranium enrichment that was permitted. Now, they've sought a permanent enrichment ban. So these are some of the differences. There's also a strict nuclear sunset clause that was imposed then. Right now, there's no specific nuclear sunset limit which has been agreed upon. There's also the earlier reliance purely on diplomatic leverage. Now, of course, we've seen that they've explicitly kept military options open. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, if you look at the two deals, it's quite clear that the JCPOA was perhaps, more specific, and it had bound the Iranian regime more. This agreement, on the other hand, appears to have given a lot of leverage to the Iranian side.
No, that's on nuclear, that's not entirely accurate. See, the problem with the JCPOA was that, it was built on this realist paradigm that you can only contain a country for so long and you can't contain them across all specters, not terrorism, not ballistic missiles, just nuclear. I think after canceling that deal, Trump seems to have come to that exact same conclusion. But where this deal is better is, remember, this is not a deal yet. It is just a standstill agreement. It is the basis for specifics to be negotiated. So yes, the JCPOA was a very, very technical agreement. This is not yet a technical agreement. It is a political agreement where the technical details have 60 days to be worked out. And I will see, look, politically, Iran has run rings around America right now. Maybe in the technical negotiation, it'll be different. I would say that even in spite of all of this, if they avoid a sunset clause and get a permanent bar on enrichment and permanent unfettered access to all Iranian nuclear sites, including sites that may be discovered and undisclosed sites being considered breaches, that would still be a sort of semi-victory, if nothing else.
Okay.
I think other issue has been, the Israeli war goals, they've been permanently expansive, and that's what JD Vance pointed to today.
Exactly.
Which is that, we can stop Iran nuclear. Unfortunately, we can't stop terrorism that comes out of Iran. We can't stop their drone program. We can't stop their ballistic missile program. We can't link them. But the problem is, it looks like a defeat when Iran very successfully then goes on to link Lebanon and the Houthis and things like that. And right now, the Iranians have again suspended free passage. I don't know if you've seen the reports. Just 2 hours back, they've suspended free passage through the Hormuz again, threatening ships again because of Israeli strikes on Lebanon now. Now, you can keep expanding war goals like this. Victory again. I mean, ultimately, like I said, it's a political concept. You decide one who's lost.
Right. Ambassador Gunter, I just want to draw your attention to one fact. At the end of the day, the JCPOA was negotiated over a period of time. I think it's about 2 years that it took, 2 years that they took to actually negotiate it. And the MOU, on the other hand, is just a framework for 60 days of talks. You may achieve more, you may not achieve more. You may achieve a lot less, in fact, at least going by what's at the moment agreed upon. So how is it that Trump continues to sort of abuse or sort of play down what Obama and the other countries had managed to achieve in 2015?
It's such a great question. The only problem is that your compare and contrast diagrams excluded one thing. It excluded Donald Trump's gun to the head of the Iranians. So there's a big difference between Barack Hussein Obama's chocolate and flowers that he gives people and throws billions of dollars at them, and Donald Trump, who's destroyed their Navy, who's destroyed their Air Force, who's eliminated their so-called supreme commander, and the number 2 guy who doesn't have any extremities.
Come on, Ambassador Gunter, U.S. is not prepared for another war. It's quite clear the U.S. equally wants out of this war. I think that's pretty evident. As much of the bravado as you might want to put out and repeat how much you've destroyed of Iran, the fact is U.S. also knows that it has caused huge international global economic distress, and it cannot afford to do it because it's hitting U.S. itself.
Prices, I love you. I love you very much, but I have to respectfully disagree with you. Oil right now is $77 a barrel and fluctuating between 74 and 80. The world is actually breathing a sigh of relief. And especially, you all know my great love of India and the Indian people and your great Prime Minister Modi. You have been saved by Donald J. Trump, saved by even Benjamin Netanyahu, because you no longer have a nuclear-armed country in your neighborhood. China's nuclear armed. You have a territorial dispute. Pakistan is nuclear armed. You have a territorial dispute. The Indian people, yourself, and everyone on the panel has been saved by the greatest president ever, Donald J. Trump, and the great Prime Minister.
Sir, very respectfully, we don't know for sure that Iran's nuclear program is off the charts, or it's really going to be, sustained in any which way. We really don't know. It all depends on those 60 days of negotiations. And let me bring in Aaron on that. Aaron, what's the guarantee that this nuclear program or the nuclear material, the uranium that's already been enriched, is going to be destroyed? There's absolutely no guarantee. There's just a statement of intent. Now, that need not translate into the end of Iran's nuclear ambition.
No, and to the extent that it relies on Iran voluntarily taking steps at a certain point, whether supposedly negotiated or not, we've seen this song and dance before, and it's never ended well. But there's another factor that comes into play too. Within the memorandum of understanding, there are also lines about the status quo. That's going to have to be worked out. We don't know how that's going to go. And on the American side, there are actually legal challenges to this memorandum as well. So there's a law professor named Jack Goldsmith, who's a very, very esteemed legal scholar. And he pointed out that in 2015, Congress passed something called the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, INARA. And that was meant to ensure that the United States Congress could review any deals that were subsequently made regarding Iran's nuclear program, and that a president could not unilaterally waive sanctions or otherwise affect Iran's nuclear program without congressional approval. It was done because of JCPOA, But it's now going to come back because it seems like the reading of this agreement implicates INARA, which remains law. So there are a lot of further issues, even on the American legal side, before we can really talk about what this is going to mean. And that undercuts any sort of reliability that we can have regarding Iran's nuclear program. I cannot see this as ending it.
Absolutely. And I just want to sum up, before we end this debate, what J.D. Vance specifically said. He had said that Donald Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who's sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And that just goes to show the kind of stress, the kind of tension that exists post this agreement, how much of this will sustain, whether the peace can hold, or whether the various attacks that are potentially likely to take place on the various fault lines will erupt, and whether this very fragile peace, as it's being called, will sustain. I'd like to thank all our panelists: Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Ambassador Jeffrey Gunter, Aaron Eaton, Mayor Staff Cohen, Ina Tangent, Syed Imamian, and Zaki Zaidi. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.